The views expressed are solely those of the speaker and not necessarily those of Paltalk.com, AVM Software, or its advertisers.
News Talk is online. News Talk Online is a production of Paltalk.com, the largest program on the internet, with more than 4 million unique users. On demand on iTunes, on demand on YouTube, on demand on my blog, GaryBaumgarten.com, where you can post your comments, whether you agree with yours truly or not, no retribution, and where you can subscribe to my Twitter feed, twitter.com/GaryBaumgarten, to find out everything that you need to know to be an informed Paltalk chatter. And we're going to be launching a new contest. The person on my Twitter feed on a daily basis who posts the most interesting comment or link to information, a very subjective decision on the part of the judge, me, will get a free green nick to Paltalk. And thanks to our good friends at CRN Digital Talk Radio, we're syndicated to an additional 12 million households. I am your host, Gary Baumgarten. I welcome you to the show. We've talked seriously about don't ask, don't tell. I actually made a joke about don't ask, don't tell the other day that caused a little bit of angst among some people who didn't get the joke. I guess I should stick to being the straight man rather than the comedian, but they apologize for their public denouncements of me for that. But I, for one, am opposed to what perhaps at the time that it was initiated by then President Clinton was a good thing. I think it's outlived its purpose. And I'm going to tell you, by way of introduction of our guest, that the policy allows for gay people to join the military so long as they don't acknowledge that they're gay. You're not allowed to ask them. They're not allowed to tell. If they acknowledge that they are gay, they drum them out of the military. Stupid in this day and age, 2009, that gays cannot serve with distinction openly. They can only serve with distinction under the radar. Then it's accepted. You can be gay in the military, serve with distinction, unless you acknowledge that you're gay, and then I guess you're unfit for battle. Well, our guest today, and you've heard about him, you may have seen him on television, you may have read about him in the newspapers, is clearly fit to be a warrior, to wear a uniform of the armed services of the United States of America, but he came out of the closet, and now out he goes. First Lieutenant Dan Choi was an infantry and still is an infantry platoon leader and officer in the National Guard. He's a West Point graduate. He is a linguist expert in Arabic. He, while in Iraq, whether he was leading patrols or meeting with local Iraqi government officials or Iraqi army leaders, acted as his own interpreter. He built friendships and added to the counterinsurgency push, was involved in the reconstruction efforts in the Triangle of Death. He helped rehabilitate the country's water and sewage infrastructure, and he still has contact with many Iraqi leaders and friends. But when he returned to the United States after a tour of duty, he fell in love with another guy and couldn't hide the fact any longer in his mind that he was gay. And so he came out on the Rachel Maddow show on MSNBC and almost immediately received a letter from the military saying that proceedings were underway to discharge him, a notification letter that Dan Choi has described as a slap in the face. And I will say, Dan Choi, not just a slap in your face, not just a slap in the face of other gays in the military, but I think a slap in the face to all of us who believe in fairness and human rights and equal rights. Dan Choi, welcome to News Talk Online
so much for
on Paltalk.com.
Wonderful that you're telling the story.
Well, I'm so happy that you've, you're a very brave individual for volunteering for service in a combat zone, and a brave guy to come out of the closet the way you have in a manner in which you knew would put you at risk as a continuing member of the military. You, in retrospect.
Thank you, Jerry. Yeah, I do agree that some people have seen that as an act of bravery. Other people have gone so far as to say it's essential in our civil rights movement, and compared the action to Rosa Parks or Martin Luther King. I think that is an unfair comparison. I mean, when I look at heroines like Rosa Parks and Martin Luther King, I see how much they sacrificed. All I did myself was tell the truth about who I am, and all I did was I refused to lie. That's just falling back on my training. And that's the training that the U.S. Army and West Point, the U.S. Military Academy, paid for me, and taxpayers have paid for me to do. It's just my job, as I see it.
You know, I think that there is little difference between you and Rosa Parks. Maybe Martin Luther King, but I knew Rosa Parks. I had the pleasure of knowing her. I was a reporter in Detroit for many years, and consequently got to know her on a personal level as well as a news source. And I had the greatest of respect for her, and probably hold her in the highest regard as compared to anybody else that I have interviewed in my career. You know, all she said this to me many times, and she said this to other people many times very publicly. All she wanted to do was sit down because she was tired. She did not intend to be the symbol of the civil rights movement, and perhaps your intentions were likewise. I don't know. I'm not in your mind. What motivated you to?
Sure, a lot of people, they saw
the situation.
Maddow's show, and they saw just me speaking, and said, you know, this is a public declaration of just me, and that's it's not a complete story. We formed a group of West Point graduates. Now there's 70 of us that are either lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender, and we said, look, enough is enough. This is who we are. We refuse to lie. From day one at West Point, we learned, before we learned to salute, before we learned to stand at attention, even before we learned how to take orders, we learned the honor code. And those values, that's what builds our foundation. So we said, enough. This is insulting not just to us as a group of gay and lesbian soldiers, veterans. It's an insult to our entire country as to what our country stands for. So we said we're going to repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell, but we're also doing this. We're sending this message out for all those other silent soldiers. There's an estimated over 65,000 LGBT members in the military right now serving. And, of course, there's about 1.4 million veterans, LGBT, in America. And so we say, you know what? It's not for us that we come out. And everybody asks, what